Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ABCs of Public Speaking in a Virtual Environment presentation. To get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Daniel Valady. I am a training specialist with the City of Phoenix Human Services Department. My primary role is to provide workforce development related materials to the general public. So some of those materials initiatives that I provide are public workshops where I travel around the valley educating on resume building, interviewing skills, and also LinkedIn profile development. Super excited to be here with you today. So to get started with our presentation for today, let's kind of take in an overarching look about where we are now. Let's take a look at our current reality. Flash forward a little over a year ago, our world really looked a lot different pre-COVID, did it not? In response to the COVID pandemic, we have all really had to adjust across the board, both in our professional and personal lives, ranging from the way that we interact with family and friends during the holidays changed, even to the way that we conducted everyday tasks within our community, like shopping, something simple as shopping, down to the way that we provide services to the community. Narrowing our scope a little bit, let's take a little bit more of a focus on our professional environment because that alone has dramatically changed. It shifted how we provide services to the public and also how we engage with our colleagues. If you're a student, it's really shifted the way that you engage with your peers and your studies, where you really truly all can relate to this. With all these changes, we all know that our environment has heavily shifted towards a virtual world. Considering that this virtual environment probably isn't going away anytime soon, the focus of today's workshop is effective public speaking in a virtual environment. In today's presentation, we'll review some core principles to really ensure that we maintain effective public speaking in this virtual world. Please keep in mind that these principles can be applied to a variety of formats, ranging from meetings, webinars, and/or public speaking presentations. So, with our ABCs, naturally, the first letter that we're going to start with is the letter A. In the context of today's workshop, A is going to stand for attire. Definitely attire. Great place to start. Because as we are speaking and presenting in a virtual environment, one of the things that we really always want to maintain, and this applies to the face-to-face presentation as well. If we're public speaking in a traditional format in person, this applies as well. This is across the board, both in person and virtually. We want to dress professionally. We want to promote positive impressions. We want to showcase that we are put together, that we are ready to roll. This is very similar to if we were conducting a interview. Maybe we're interviewing online with a potential employer. The same rules pretty much apply. We want to dress professionally. We want to be clean cut. We don't want to have any of that funky bed hair. So a lot of those same principles still apply. Some people will argue that, man, you could even be in your pajamas from the waist down because on the camera you can't really see that. Some will debate that. I think that could work. However, I'm not so much a fan of that. I think sometimes where even if our audience can't see our whole outfit, I'm a huge fan of really going the whole nine, putting on the shoes, dressing up like we would in person, because it really kind of gets us in that mental state of being ready to present. and just kind of gets us in that mind frame, gets us ready to roll. So just a helpful hint on that. Um, Also, with that being said, considering that we are in a virtual environment, things we have to really keep in mind that things really aren't amplified because as we're conducting presentations on web conferencing platforms like Zoom or WebEx, the audience really only sees us usually from the chest or the shoulders up. So everything in that little box, in that little frame from the chest and shoulders up really is amplified. So with your attire, please also be mindful that some colors really do pop more than others. On the screen here, you're going to see just some of my favorite colors that really pop. This is based off of other feedback that I've received online from other trainers and other public speakers. And myself, as you can see today, I'm wearing blue. And I've experimented with these colors because they really do make a difference. Another personal favorite of mine are the colors fuchsia and coral. Those also really pop as well. And I encourage you, next time you're watching the news or you're watching some type of a panel online or on TV, take note of some of the colors that individuals wear. And you're going to see how some individuals who are wearing those vibrant colors really pop out and stand out more than those individuals who are just wearing black. Nothing against black because I love it. It's a great color. But in a virtual environment, especially when we're public speaking, we really want to pop. All righty, let's move on to the next letter in our alphabet. The next one is B for background and lighting. This is pretty foundational information that we should all become familiar with, especially in a virtual environment. It's a little bit different because back in the day, we were all typically in front of a room or on a stage, and those days we haven't seen for quite a while. So this is a little bit different in regards to our virtual environment. When we are presenting or speaking publicly in a virtual environment, we really need to be mindful of our background. Our background really doesn't need to be anything extravagant and over the top. Sometimes simple is better. Simple is better. On our screen here, you're going to see two examples near the top that have positive check marks on them. The first one at the top is just kind of some kind of subtle plant stand. It doesn't need to be anything crazy, something in the background. And then you can never go wrong with just a white wall, plain wall in the back. Pictures are fine. Books in the background are fine. We just really don't want it to be distracting. Some people may say, well, Daniel, a white wall is really boring. Well, if it's boring, that means it's not distracting. That's typically pretty much a positive. We really want to ensure that the focus is on us and then also on our content, our presentation itself. We don't want people looking and focusing on our background. That's a distraction. Other background items that we want to be mindful of are other stuff like a fan, a spinning fan. I observed a presentation recently where the presenter was in their household, which a lot of us are, but I think they were presenting in their living room and there's a spinning fan in the background and it was incredibly distracting. So that's a perfect example. Near the bottom, some don'ts that we typically want to be mindful of that we don't want to do for our background is the picture on the very bottom there, you'll see to the left. It's me presenting in front of a window. That's a pretty foundational do not. That's something you do not want to do in a virtual environment is place yourself in front of a window because the lighting is coming from back of you, hitting the back of you, and the front part of you kind of it's covered in shadows. Just really it's not very flattering. So we really want to ensure that the lighting is hitting our our facing side of us is hitting our face so that we are clear, easy to see, really bright and shiny. Very much like the front example, the top two examples, you'll see the lighting is hitting us from the front. A lot more clear, a lot more engaging, just a lot more pleasant overall. So any lighting should be at the front, not the back. Please do not sit in front of windows. It does not work in our favor. And then the last example I want to bring to your attention is the example on the very bottom to the right. You're going to see that I have a background of, I believe, the Golden Gate Bridge. And many of these web conferencing platforms like WebEx and Zoom, they all have those really cool blur backgrounds and a background where you're like in an office setting or you're in outer space. They're all really cool and exciting. However, I'm a firm believer that the technology has not yet been perfected. Um, you can see here that in this example, something's going on with my eyebrows there, and the background is kind of bleeding into my face. So I think they're all very, very cool and exciting. However, in terms of conducting a quality public speaking presentation, those virtual backgrounds are risky because the technology really hasn't been perfected yet. So just be mindful of that. But you can never go wrong with there's a simple background. Does not need to be extravagant. Sometimes simple is better. Okay, let's now move on to our next letter of the alphabet, which is C for camera. And this is very, very important as well in our new virtual environment, because essentially we really need to be mindful of how we pace our camera, the placement of our camera, because depending where we place it can really determine whether we have flattering point of view of us versus flattering versus unflattering. So for example here, if you look at the very top row, you're going to see the first kind of do not scenario where we should not place our camera, the way we should not place it. So the very top one, you're going to see if we're sitting down, let's say at our desk, whatever it may be, you're going to see that the camera, if the camera is placed below eye level, if it's placed below eye level, to the right there, you're going to see an example of myself where I place the camera below my eye level. And typically, this is a pretty popular, pretty widely known, not very flattering view shot. In my example here, I'm going to call myself out. You can see kind of right up my nostrils there. It's not you can see right up my neck there. I don't have the most flattering viewpoint there. It's just not the best version of us that we want to be able to showcase. So feel free to avoid that camera angle placement. If you go to the middle row, you're going to see another example. And this, I think this one's not as bad as the top example here, but it's still not the best version of us that we could display in a virtual environment. In the middle one here, you're going to see the camera now is instead not placed at eye level, but instead placed above eye level, where we're kind of looking up. And I've seen some before where the camera is placed incredibly high, and it kind of looks like a surveillance camera in a way. And again, it just doesn't really showcase the best version of us. So what we really want to strive to do is avoid those top two examples and instead refer to the very bottom example. And this is kind of our ideal situation on how we want to place our camera. And you're going to see here in the diagram to the left on that bottom row, that silhouette of the person and the computer, they're placed at eye level. And on the example of myself at the very right, that's how it should typically look. The camera there is at eye level, showcases the best version of us, it promotes positive lighting all around, it displays ourselves very, very well. So just some helpful hints on camera. C is for camera. Alrighty, let's move on to D. In our presentation today, D stands for design. And this is a personal favorite of mine. I'm a huge advocate for ensuring that we have quality, appealing designs in our content and presentations. Again, in a virtual environment, we really have to make up and amplify things in this virtual environment because we're not in person. So things need to be a little more engaging, eye-catching. So here are some 6 helpful hints in if you are using and leveraging a PowerPoint deck. Here are some 6 helpful hints to ensure that your design is top-notch. First one is font size and type. Many times, as we know, on the example here that you're seeing, we're going to be putting font sizes, we're going to be putting font, and just make sure that your font that you use is easy to read, it's engaging, it looks cool, it kind of just goes with the theme of your PowerPoint. The size, make sure it's appropriate, all of that stuff, even down to color. Color makes a big difference. Next one is consistent backgrounds. I'm a huge advocate for ensuring that the theme of your design, of your background is consistent throughout. It can be different. It can be different designs, as you'll see in our presentation today. Each slide is a little bit different. The notebooks are a little bit different. The placement is different, but the background theme overall makes sense. I don't have one slide as a background as a forest, and then the next slide is a space background. It just doesn't make sense. It's not very consistent with our theme. So ensure that our backgrounds are consistent. Contrast is another helpful hint. Kind of goes hand in hand with the 2 previous tips, but just ensure that the contrast of your text with your background and your images with your text and your background, all these different elements that they just kind of go together, because sometimes when you place pictures next to text, just the contrast there doesn't look very well, just doesn't fit. The place, it could be down to the size, down to the colors, the contrast between the 2 or the 3 just don't make sense. So sometimes it's a matter of just playing with those different items. Another tip is high quality images. Huge fan of this. This is a personal pet peeve of mine. I love the fact that Microsoft PowerPoint has been moving away from the old school clip art, and it is really not very engaging and innovative and cool looking. Some of the stuff is very, very dated. So I love the fact that they're moving away from that. But now we have a plethora of options on the World Wide Web of different high quality images that we could use. So just ensure that we have high quality images that really bring out the best elements of our presentation. Another helpful hint is labels. It's very, very common that in presenting, we are showcasing pictures, graphs, some type of pictograph, something, data of some sort. To us, it may make sense about what we're talking about, what we're referencing, because we're the expert. That's why we're presenting on it. We're in the know. It makes sense to us. However, our audience may not make sense to them. May make as much sense to them. So putting those labels sometimes can go a long way for our audience, and it helps them be able to better follow along. Okay. And then last but not least is one of my personal favorites is a duplicate final slide. And this especially is applicable if when we're presenting a presentation that may have like different animations, and when we're getting to the final slide, I know I'm guilty of it. It's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you, where you may be clicking the next button and your PowerPoint is running a little slow, and you get a little impatient and you click it a little too many times to have your animations go through. You may have been a little impatient, clicked it too many times, and it goes to the very end at the black screen, and it just totally skips your final presentation. A little bit of a mood killer, kind of kills that final that final that you try to present and bring to the table. So instead, just in case if you accidentally go through all your animations and skip over your final slide, feel free to include just a final slide without any animations. So just in case if you pass it on accident, it's still there. It's kind of like a little safety net, especially if you're presenting presenting a pretty important presentation to your leadership, or to some type of a prominent group, you want to be able to showcase the best version of you and the message that you have to deliver. So feel free to put that duplicate slide in there. Last but not least, here are some of my personal favorite resources in terms of PowerPoints. I'm a huge fan of the website slidesgo.com. There's a variety of free PowerPoint templates to leverage and use. There's tons of them, and they split them up by different type of, I guess you could say, categories: business, marketing, if it's more for school-related stuff, and all really cool designs and themes. So feel free to leverage that. Canva is another very, very cool one, very similar to slidesgo.com. And then templates.office.com. This is through Microsoft. If you log in, I believe with your city account, you have access to a very limited library of some really cool templates that are not loaded onto our PowerPoint already. So you can go on there and download some cool, pretty cool templates as well. So some cool resources for you. All righty. The next letter in our alphabet is E for energy. And this is another big, important one. I'm a stickler for this as well. We have to remember, we as public speaking individuals in a virtual environment, we are really working with a deficit here. We have to make up for that deficit in working in a virtual environment. We're not face to face. We're not in person to person, live in a classroom. So we really have to make up for something. We're not able to have that personal connection that we typically have pre-COVID. So we have a lot to make up for. So with that being said, be engaging. Be engaging. There's so many ways you can do that. One of the ways is to interact with your audience. Make every individual feel like they are noticed, that they matter, that they're there, that their presence is noticed, that we're excited for them to be there. and a way to really drive all of that home is, I love this saying. I'm going to bring it home with this. In doing so, think Texas. Think Texas. Meaning, in a virtual environment, we got to think Texas, meaning everything is bigger. Everything is bigger. The emotions are bigger. The energy is bigger. The smiles are bigger. The gestures are bigger, because there's so much more that we have to make up for, since we don't have that human connection, that person, physical connection. We got to just do big. Think big. Think Texas. Next is F. In our alphabet, F stands for flow of content. And then I think typically this one comes a little bit more naturally for us when we are presenting on a subject that is maybe we're a little bit more experienced with, and that we consider maybe ourselves an expert with. So it just kind of comes to us naturally. Ensuring that when we deliver our content, that it's delivered out in a way that is digestible for our audience, that it makes sense, and that it kind of just is delivered in like a storytelling type of way, where it's easy to follow. There's a beginning and then there's an end. Some helpful hints and to ensure that our flow of content is appropriate is number one, organize your ideas. And depending on the format, whether you're doing a webinar or just a general public speaking event or just a staff meeting, there are tons of things that you can leverage to organize your ideas. Meeting agendas for staff meetings. If you're conducting a webinar, maybe have an opening slide giving a roadmap about objectives you plan on accomplishing for that webinar. A lot of really cool tools to help organize your ideas. Another helpful hint is have your talking points ready. You know, I'm a huge fan of having personal notes, having those ready to to be able to help you keep on track of, how you want to deliver your material. And that looks different for everybody. Some people print out their slides and have them in front of them with handwritten notes on them. Some individuals use sticky notes and they have their talking points on sticky notes. Whatever works best for you. And this is another one that's pretty important is ensuring that your content connects, especially within your topic, whatever you're talking about. There's a very diverse set of subtopics you're talking about, but they're all really under the same umbrella of that one main topic. Just ensuring that your content flows, that your transitions between each subtopic make sense. It helps to serve as a helpful segue. And that really, I think, just comes with experience and time and also some strategy. Next on our alphabet is G for grace in time of failure. And this is another huge one. As a presenter, and I know if any of us have done public speaking before, man, we can all relate to struggles and challenges and some failures that I'm sure we have encountered, right? So in time of failure, please ensure that we extend grace. And again, I think this can go both ways, both as the presenter and as an attendee. As a presenter and as an attendee, please remain calm. Don't freak out. Remain cool. Don't complain. I think especially this goes for both of us. As a presenter, we really don't want to complain. It doesn't really showcase the best version of us. And as an attendee, we know what it's like to be up on that stage. So the last thing we want to extend is some grace to our presenters, because we have been there before. Extend some grace to them, because we can pretty much bet all of our money that this individual, this presenter, did not wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna present a funky presentation today. That's my goal. We know that wasn't the case. So as a presenter, extend grace for our presenter. One reminder you're going to see near the bottom is backup plans. And I think in having to extend grace as a presenter, if I'm a presenter and having to extend grace to myself, because sometimes we are so critical in ourselves, don't beat yourself up. Instead, please leverage your backup plans, because I know that's something we should be doing. We should be having backup plans, contingency plans for those things that could potentially go wrong. So let's say our internet does go out. If possible, be ready to have a second source of internet ready to roll. Many phones now have a mobile device, Wi-Fi hotspot. Have that ready to roll, just in case if your internet goes out. If you're noticing that your internet is shoddy and you get disconnected from the meeting, man, have that phone number ready to roll. As many web conferencing meetings you can join via phone, you can dial in, and have that number ready in case you get kicked out on your desktop or your laptop. Be ready to roll by calling in. Maybe your PowerPoint freezes and you're not able to navigate and use your PowerPoint. Have your PowerPoint printed out and have your notes in front of you so that you can still present. Maybe you could send all the presentees a PDF printout of your slides and navigate that way if you're not able to present it. Just have contingency plans ready to roll in the event that you do have to extend some grace. It happens, no matter how much we prepare, it can happen sometimes. And the last but not least, I'm a huge fan of the term roll with it. As I mentioned before, sometimes we can be our biggest critic. And sometimes I've seen a trend with presenters sometimes is that they like to point out their failures. Oh, I forgot this topic, or I forgot this bullet point. I'm so sorry, guys. Don't apologize. Please do not apologize. Because half the time as a presenter, when we make a mistake, majority of majority of the time, like 95% of the time, our audience does not even know. Best believe that for sure, 100%. Half the time, more than half the time, our audience does not even know. Calling ourselves out and apologizing, we're kind of giving ourselves up and showcasing that we messed up. So please don't do it. Just roll with the punches, and you can always come back around later and provide that talking point that you missed or that you messed up on. It's really not a big deal. Please roll with it. You're awesome. You can make it work. All right. The next letter in our alphabet is H. H is for help with moderation. I think this is super incredibly helpful if we're able to get assistance with moderation for our presentation, our meeting, whatever it may be. Especially if you're conducting a presentation where there's a large audience. Larger the audience, the more helpful it is to have a moderator, somebody that kind of serves as your right hand while you're speaking and presenting, that can really do all the behind the scenes things in that meeting, such as letting participants into the room. If you have some security, if you have to allow them in the room, you have to allow like click them to enter. So manage participants. It's super helpful to have a moderator, especially because they're able to let you know when something's wrong, you're not aware of it. Maybe your audio is funky and you don't even realize it, and the audience is not speaking up. Your moderator can give you a heads up on that so you can fix that right away. Maybe you're sharing your screen and it's not coming up on the audience side. Again, your moderator can let you know that. Another thing is, I'm a huge fan for presentations in a virtual environment. Respect the chat box. Respect the chat box. It's so common. I've seen so many times in a virtual environment where the chat box is easily overlooked because there's so much going on sometimes. So having somebody specifically to monitor that chat box is incredibly helpful. If a participant asks questions, we're able to have our moderator kind of boss us around and give us a heads up. Hey, Daniel, we have a question from so-and-so. Can you please answer this very quickly? And then kind of puts it on our radar, and we're able to address that question, because we really don't want to ignore any participants. Respect the chat box. And then bringing it home with our last letter for today, which is I. I for imposter syndrome. And for those of us who do not know what imposter syndrome is basically, it really is a psychological pattern where we think that we do not have the skills, abilities, and expertise to perform, to do something. Pretty much follows in line with being our worst critic, okay? And I think all of us viewing this meeting for today can relate to that, right? To some extent, whether it be in our personal lives or especially in our professional lives. Sometimes we kind of get in our head and we think we may doubt ourselves. Especially in this virtual environment, I hear so often from individuals where they have a technology hangup. They say, oh, well, this technology, I can't do it. I'm not good at technology. It always ends up hurting me. No. We need to change that mind frame. The technology is not the hangup, because at the end of the day, I need you to remember this. You are the final product. The technology there is just there to assist us, but we truly are the final product. We are the final product. I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it one last time. You are the final product. There's nothing you can put on a slide as innovative, as compelling, as engaging as you. Don't forget it. You are the final product. And bringing it home to ensure that we are the final product to really showcase how great we are, to really deliver the message that we have. If we follow the thought process here, is if we follow and adhere to these ABCs of speaking in a virtual environment, we can really knock it out of the park. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for viewing today's presentation. My name is Daniel Valady, Training Specialist with the City of Phoenix Human Services Department. My contact information here is on the screen. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions, concerns, or requests. Thank you very much.